Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. Love is gentle, love is kind. Love is the only answer in hard times. Hate solves nothing and brings us down. Love is the only thing that turns it round. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. Dream of love, dream with your heart. When setting out in life, make love your start. When times are hard, love finds a way. Even when the word is hard to say. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear.
Good morning and welcome to United First Parish Church in Quincy, Massachusetts. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey, welcome to our Unitarian Universalist spiritual community. We're delighted to welcome anyone who may be visiting us, and you may learn more about our community by going to our website, ufpc.org. I'm Joan McDonald, the Director of Religious Education, and I will be your worship leader this morning while Reverend Rebecca Froome is on study leave. And our worship leaders this morning on screen and behind the screen are Jamie Grassman, David Downs, Karl DeBisschop, and Albert Vaughn. The order of service for this morning can be downloaded from our website, and you can find a link in the chat box. Note that we are recording this morning to be posted on YouTube at a later date, and if you would prefer not to be seen in the recording, please turn off your video. Also, if you're having a poor connection or you've been on Zoom for too many hours this week, feel free to turn off your video and experience the service in audio only. We invite everyone to stay online for our virtual social hour after the service, and it will include an option of breakout rooms to reflect on the subject of our service today. Now, let us center ourselves for worship by taking a deep breath together, feeling the spirit of love and life that moves within, between, and beyond us all. I'm going to go to gallery view. And if you have a chalice to light, the words for our chalice lighting and call to worship are from Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. We light our chalices in the spirit of community. Now we will share our covenant that is on the screen. As a free fellowship of this church, we unite to lift
our hearts and open our minds to a larger reality, to accept support and encourage one another, to seek the
wisdom in all religions, to cherish and sustain the web of life, and to strive for justice, compassion, and peace. And if you will lift your voices in song and sing hymn number 1020, it's Wo Ya Ya. It's recorded by the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Palouse, Moscow, Idaho Church.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. And we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. 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 Oh yeah,
Before I share the message for all ages, I wanted to introduce the young girl who is speaking in the video. This young girl's name is Marley Diaz, and at this time, she's 11 years old, and this would have been in 2015, I believe. She started a campaign called hashtag 1000 Black Girl Books for literary representation, which started when she complained to her mom that all of the books that she was getting in school to read were only about white boys and dogs. And she told her mother, "I am sick about reading about white boys and dogs." And her mother said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" And she did something about it. She told her that she was going to start a book drive where Black girls are the main characters in the book and not background characters or minor characters. So she launched in 2015 hashtag 1000 Black Girl Books Drive, and leveraging the power of social media, her goal was to collect 1,000 books featuring Black female protagonists by February of 2016. Well, the story went viral and it was picked up by a lot of media outlets. And so, at least from what the website says, she has so far collected 12,000 books to date, and she donates them to schools and libraries across the country. And also in that time, she authored a book titled Marley Diaz Gets It Done, and So Can You.
Hi, I'm Marley Diaz. I'm 11 years old. A lot of grown-ups think that opportunities exist for all kids and all we need to do is apply ourselves. But I know that's just not true. It shouldn't matter if you live in the city or suburbs, on a farm or a reservation, or what your zip code may be, but it does. There's still rules to keep our schools separate and unequal. Why? We spend a lot of time talking about whether what someone says or does is racist, but that's not enough. You not liking me for the color of my skin is not the only thing that can affect my chances for success. I'm talking about the built-in barriers that could keep me and other kids from reaching our full potential. It's all around us. We might not recognize it, even when it's right under our noses. Like, remember that time I had to start a campaign just to get books in my library about kids who look like me? Do you care enough to look closer, to talk to each other, to your students, to your communities? We've got to change the dialogue. Because when we do, you'll be amazed by all we can accomplish. I'm looking at you.
Let us take a deep breath together as we open our hearts for the sharing of our joys and sorrows. This is a time to briefly share the life milestones that lift your spirits in joy and hope, or the pains and losses that fill us with heartache. As we enter this time of sharing, we light a candle of joy, knowing that a joy shared is a joy magnified. And we also light a candle of sorrow, knowing that a sorrow shared is a sorrow diminished. If you wish to acknowledge a sorrow or a joy from your heart, I invite you to raise your hand and unmute your mic when our digital usher, Jamie Grassman, calls your name. Let us open our hearts to one another. As we end our sharing, we light a final candle representing all the joys and sorrows that remain silently in our hearts. May the light of these candles and the compassion of this community remind us that wherever we are on our journeys, we are each worthy of love and we're each able to love. Let us return to that deep breath of life and love. Let us take a deep breath together, relaxing. Let us take a deep breath together as we share a moment of silence. Will you lift your hearts and join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation, listening in these words for the language of faith that is most meaningful for you. You know, eternal presence known by many names, known in many ways. We open our hearts with joy, knowing that there are folks who are recovering from COVID, folks who are receiving COVID vaccinations. We really appreciate knowing that G. Fred is on the road to recovery and awaiting the surgery that will really help him. We also acknowledge with sorrow the losses that are happening in our community, whether it's a beloved pet or old friends. In this time when we are balanced between uncertainty and hope, I would like to share this prayer, and the words are from Reverend Teresa Soto. She writes, "Bring your broken hallelujah here. Bring the large one that is beyond repair. Bring the small one that's too soft to share. Bring your broken hallelujah here. I know that people have told you that before you can give, you have to get yourself together. They overstated the value of perfection by a lot. Or they forgot you are the gift. We all bring some broken things, songs and dreams and long lost hopes. But here together, we reach within as a community. We begin again. And from the pieces, we will build something new. There is work that only you can do. We wait for you." Please join in singing Hymn 101, Abide With Me, performed by Leah Morris. The words will be in the video screen.
Abide with me, fast falls the eventide, the darkness deepens, still with me abide. swift to its close, ebbs out life's little day. Earth's joys grow dim, its glories pass away. Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changes not, abide with me. We need each other every passing hour. Channels of grace and life affirming power. Faithful companions share this path with me. Through all our fears and hopes, abide with me.
Last September, we started an anti-racism book discussion and selected the book White Fragility: Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Race by Robin DiAngelo. That was the first book we chose. In the last 6 months, we have struggled with the discomfort of our participation in a society moored by deep roots in racism and white supremacy. This morning, Albert Vaughn, David Downs, and Karl DeBisschop will share their reflections on the journey that we've taken together that has been mixed with discomfort, pain, and understanding. I invite Albert to start.
Good morning. The poem that I chose was You Still Dream by Nikki Grimes. Here, poem meets prayer. We are exceedingly comfortable with posturing and self-defense that masquerade as apology. But what's needed in this moment is unmixed confession of our nation's sin, deep and indefensible. Now I lay me down to sleep, must make way for something more muscular, sackcloth and ashes, prayer and fasting, naked prostration. Daniel understood radical repentance begins with the unvarnished profession, you are righteous and we are not. Please heal our nation, cleanse our stubborn hearts, show each of us what part to play. Broken as Judah and Jerusalem, we cry and come bending our will towards the good. You dream for us still, no matter our skin, no matter what skin we're in. And what that said to me was, it's better for me to understand the effect of my words and actions and hold myself accountable than to defend what my intent was. And this brings me back to the prayer of St. Francis. It is better for me to understand than to be understood. And sometimes that realization is painful. Thank you. And I'd like to bring on David Downs.
Thank you, Albert. Before reading White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, I had a shallow concept of systemic racism. I believed that as a white person raised in a racist society, I was racist. It was impossible not to be. But I hadn't really grappled with that idea or sought to understand the mechanisms by which racism works. Reading White Fragility was helpful in this regard. It provided an eye-opening survey of the array of methods that sustain and promote systemic racism. One method in particular stood out to me. It's a mindset DiAngelo calls the good-bad binary. Her analysis of this mindset made it possible for me to lower my defenses, so I was more open to understanding everything else she had to say about how white people, people like me, maintain racism in our society. To define the good-bad binary, DeAngelo notes that after the civil rights movement, quote, "You could not be a good person and participate in racism. Only bad people were racist," end quote. But then she digs deeper and explains, quote, "While making racism bad seems like a positive change, we have to look at how this functions in practice. Within this paradigm, to suggest that I am racist is to deliver a deep moral blow, a kind of character assassination. Having received this blow, I must defend my character, and that is where all my energy will go, to deflecting the charge rather than reflecting on my behavior," end quote. Reading this made me realize that the good-bad dynamic was one of the reasons it was challenging for me to come to grips with what DeAngelo was explaining in her book. Despite my best intentions to read the book with an open mind and heart, at some level I was wrestling with the idea that I would have had to admit I was a bad person before I could understand my role in systemic racism. However, by naming and explaining the good-bad binary, by making it visible, DeAngelo raised the possibility of stepping outside of it. For me, this opened up the generous and liberating possibility that perhaps while being racist, I was not an entirely bad person. Perhaps I was a somewhat good person embedded in a very bad system. This perspective helped lower my defenses and made me better able to hear what DeAngelo was saying in the rest of her book. To be clear, stepping outside of the binary didn't absolve me of my role in systemic racism, nor remove the requirement to fight it. But by short-circuiting the knee-jerk defensiveness that is often triggered in white people by discussing racism, stepping away from the good-bad binary increased my ability to reflect on my behavior and change it for the better. To wrap up, I'd like to share Robin DeAngelo's alternative to the good-bad binary, since it is one of my main takeaways from this book and will guide my behavior going forward. Rather than focusing on the binary, she says, quote, "I have found it much more useful to think of myself as on a continuum. Racism is so deeply woven into the fabric of our society that I do not see myself escaping from that continuum in my lifetime. But I can continually seek to move further along it. I am not in a fixed position on the continuum. My position is dictated by what I am actually doing at a given time. Conceptualizing myself on an active continuum changes the question from whether I am or am not racist to a much more constructive question. Am I actively seeking to interrupt racism in this context?" End quote. Thank you for listening, and now we will hear from Karl DeBisschop.
In White Fragility, Robin DeAngelo says, "I often ask people of color, how often have you given white people feedback on our unaware yet inevitable racism? How often has that gone well for you? Eye rolling, head shaking, and outright laughter follow, along with the consensus of rarely, if ever. I then ask, what would it be like if you could simply give us feedback, have us graciously receive it, reflect, and work to change the behavior? Recently, a man of color sighed and said, it would be revolutionary." End quote. Wow, revolutionary. A friend presented me with this simple phrase years ago. Feedback is a gift. In the years since, I've tried to change my behavior so that I can live a life guided by that credo. So this passage caught me with full force. Now, racism is absolutely a form of violence that runs throughout our society. As I considered the passage, I kept coming back to Utah Phillips talking about becoming a pacifist. You look at violence like booze, he says. You know, alcoholism will kill somebody until they finally get the courage to sit in a circle of people like that and put their hand in the air and say, hi, my name's Utah and I'm an alcoholic. And then you can begin to deal with the behavior. And this is the important part. You can have the people whose lives it's messed with define that behavior for you. From a position of privilege, I don't get to define the impacts that racism has. Understanding racism has got to be a process of hearing the voices of the people whose lives it has messed with. Sometimes it's the voice of the people of color who are in our lives. But frankly, Black and brown people here in the US have more than enough to deal with. And while I welcome their feedback when they want to give it, the people of color in my life really aren't obliged to become my counselors in anti-racism. I haven't read as widely in the area as I should, but when I read things by early and mid 20th century African-American authors, I'm repeatedly struck by how much their analysis still mirrors African-American authors of today. This tells me two things. First, too little has changed. And second, Black America has been telling us how racism is felt for centuries. As a society, we just refuse to listen. And we can so easily offer excuses for our racist thoughts or deny that they exist. We could have a more just society, but we have these powerful myths of individualism we deploy to protect ourselves from facing the inequities in the US. Or we can say, I already know about this racism stuff and tune out the conversation. We have all these mechanisms of white fragility to fend off the taint of complicity. But again, paraphrasing Utah Phillips, I was born a white man in the mid-20th century industrial America. I came into the world armed to the teeth with the weapons of privilege, racial privilege, sexual privilege, economic privilege. To end racism, it's not just giving up guns and knives and clubs and fists and angry words, but giving up the weapons of privilege and going into the world completely disarmed. That's the struggle. D'Angelo says, racism is the norm rather than an aberration. Feedback is key to our ability to recognize and repair our inevitable and often unaware collusion. In recognition of this, I try to follow these guidelines. She says, first, how, when, and where you give me feedback is irrelevant. It's the feedback I want and need. Understanding it is hard to give, I will take it in any way I can get it. From my position of social, cultural, and institutional white power and privilege, I'm perfectly safe. I can handle it. If I can't handle it, it's on me to build my racial stamina. And second, thank you.
In the early 90s, when I was attending Andover Newton Theological School, my daughters and I lived on campus housing. So the benefit of being in family housing is that we often did a lot of cooperative babysitting for each other when we had classes or things that we needed to attend. One day I was watching my neighbor's son, Noah, and as a treat, we went to Blockbusters, and obviously this dates how long ago this was, to find a movie appropriate for a 4-year-old. And as we perused the racks of kids' movies, I found that there were no videos with protagonists like Noah. Here we were with hundreds of videos and none had a Black boy in it. I don't remember what video we eventually selected, but the story stays with me. And as I heard 11-year-old Marley Diaz describe what she did when she found out, when she was frustrated that the school and the local libraries didn't have books that represented Black girls, it reminded me that I didn't do anything to change that lack of representation in videos children watched. At the time, I didn't believe I had any power or privilege to change the status quo. But while reading White Fragility, I discovered that I have unearned privilege that calls me to work for justice and equity in our society. In 2017, the Unitarian Universalist Association Commission on Institutional Change was established and charged by the UUA Board of Trustees to conduct an audit of white privilege and the structure of power within our denomination, and to analyze structural racism and white supremacy culture within the UUA. We really have a long, steeped history of racism and white supremacy as a denomination, knowing that we came out of a very white English culture. Last summer, the commission published their report, and it's titled Widening the Circle of Concern. And recently, our congregation and the leadership in our congregation have begun reading it and assessing how we can make changes within our own congregation to live our UU values. So we're hoping that this discussion will continue, and the anti-racism discussion group will continue in March. We haven't selected another book, and we certainly invite other members to join us. The work of anti-oppression is hard, it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary for us white folks to do the work and make the world we live in just and equitable. I'd like to share a song that, let's see. We Will Not Stop Singing by the Chapin Sisters, and it's arranged by Adam Pod, featuring the choir from First Unitarian Choir.
We will not stop singing. We will not stop singing. We will not stop singing till the world can hear the song, till the world can sing along. We will not stop marching. We will not stop marching. We will not stop marching till the world can hear the song, till the world can sing along. Till the world can sing, till the world can sing, till the world can sing along. Till the world can sing, till the world can sing, till the world can sing along.
We will not stop praying. We will not stop praying. We will not stop praying till we all can get along, till the world can sing our song. We will not
We drink from wells we did not dig, and we sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. As the recipients of all we have received from those who came before us, we are called to share our abundance with those of us who are here now and those who will follow us. This congregation aspires to do life-affirming and life-transforming work, both for those of us who gather within these walls or for the larger web of life of which we are a part. Please take a moment to visit our website and consider clicking on the donate button located on the homepage of our website, ufpc.org. Let us open our hearts as these gifts to support the good works of United First Parish Church are joyfully given and gratefully received.
For announcements this morning, there are many ways to participate in the life and leadership of United First Parish Church. Our weekly announcements can be downloaded from the church website, ufpc.org. But of particular note, the writing group meets today at noon on Zoom. We're using the same link as our service. So even if you exit right after the service, you can return again using the same links. Every Thursday, Quincy for Black Lives Standout happens Thursday at from 2 to 4 p.m. On the front steps of the church. And save the date for the great UFPC Sweet and Savory Auction and Variety Show on Saturday, March 20th from 6:30 to 8:30 here on Zoom. And if you have items for the silent auction, contact Brenda Reed. If you want to cook a sweet or savory dish to be auctioned off, contact Susan Curran. And if you would like to perform, contact Jim Petosa. Let us center ourselves once again by taking a deep breath together, feeling the spirit of life and love that moves within, between, and beyond us all. And hear the words of Kimberly Quinn Johnson for our benediction. Hush. Somebody's calling your name. Can you hear it? Calling you to a past not quite forgotten, calling us to a future not fully imagined. Hush, hush, somebody is calling our name. What shall we do? As I extinguish the chalice, we will hear the music of Carry the Flame, sung and performed by Lee Forrest and Anne Marie Willer.